Nappy here. Like, share, subscribe, Cash App, whatever. Basically, I just wanted to get back to a video I did, just a recap on a video, or really a part two, on a video I did on ADOS, the racial wealth gap, etc. And I misspoke in that last video. So this was regarding black billionaires, who they were, what they were worth. And as we know, we already know that the white population far outnumbers the black population 5-1. I get that. So obviously there are more white billionaires than ADOS. But the gap is much larger than I thought. Not just the financial gap, but also the single ratio gap. And here's what I mean. This article, this is from Business Insider. It's called this was done actually back in September. And the headline is 614 billionaires in the country and only 7 are black. Now, the last time when I mentioned billionaires, the names that I mentioned I mentioned 5 of them. They were Puffy, Ye, Jay-Z, Oprah, and Robert Smith. I was wrong. There's actually 7 billionaires, okay? Scratch out Puffy. The 7 billionaires, you got, obviously, Ye, he's worth $1.3 billion. Jay's worth $1 billion. Jordan, how can I forget Jordan? He's $1.6 billion. You had Oprah at $2.6 billion. You have David Stewart, he's $3.7 billion. He's actually owner of WWT. That's a IT company. I'm very familiar with that. Tyler Perry, he's worth $1 billion. And then there's a $5 billion man, Robert Smith. He's a guy who paid all the student loans for the Morehouse people. So the total figure for all of these guys put together is $16.4 billion. And broken down on average, that's $2.9 billion each of them are worth. Now the last video, that was on the wealthiest families per state. And I also used the Forbes 400 list. In the Forbes 400 list, I had 118 billionaires in America. This here says there's not just 118, there's 607. That's 5 times the amount. That's 489 more billionaires and growing. I'm going to get to that in a second. I still mentioned there were 5 billionaires. As I said, I was wrong. There's actually 7 billionaires. So there's 7 black billionaires, not even twice the amount, where the white billionaires, there's actually 5 times the amount originally stated. So look at it like this. Out of that Forbes 400, we're talking about the billionaires in America only. 118 billionaires times 5, that's 607, right? The total amount when you add up the figures of that 118 billionaires is $1.328 trillion. With the black billionaires, even if you add on these two, that's $16.4 billion because it's now 46% more. So on average, each black billionaire is worth $2.3 billion. The 118 people that I've just mentioned, on average, is $11.2 billion. That's per person. But let's do this, because stretching it out, there's not 118, there's 607. So what that means is, obviously, the number is going to get a little smaller. Let's just say this. Let's just assume this. $1.328 trillion. And let's say of the 489 that you add on to that, each person is worth $1 billion each. Right? On average, that will be each billionaire, if you just added $1 billion each, because who knows how much these people worth. When you add that on to that 607 people, the average amount each person is worth is $2.9 billion. So while you have 2.3 billion on average with the 7 black billionaires that you have, they are still worth 600,000 more on average. And you know all those other people aren't just worth a measly 1 billion. And this is why when I mentioned in that video that the amount that they're asking for, you had, a couple billion, a couple trillion. I mentioned that you should have a figure of quadrillion, multiple quadrillion. In other words, if you ask for 5 quadrillion over a 20-year period, 5 quadrillion. Let's say that the ADOS population, because now you're trying to ease all these foreign blacks out. Okay, whatever. Let's say you got it down to 25 million, right? 25 million people on average per year will get $10 million per person or per family, whatever. 10 million is still a lot of money. But even if you stayed at the 40 million black people in this country, 250, you have 5 quadrillion over 20 years, that's 250 trillion per year. Each person would get $6.2 million. So blacks in America, if you were organized, if you're separated, if you started your own economy, left alone for 20 years, without interference from any other community except, maybe for commerce here and there, that $6.5 million per person would more than cover the wealth gap, give you generations of generational income. But see, I'm confused because when have you heard Tone or Yvette? Forget that FBA, the fuck boy, the fund my pocket. Forget that one. I'm talking about ADOS, with all their data, with all the numbers at their disposal, with all their intelligence, etc. Why have they not brought up these figures? That last video, right? I went over the figures and think about it. Well, why was Marianne Williamson, who gave you a paltry $2.5 billion to work with, why wasn't she run out of the room? Why was Carnell West with his goofy ass? Why didn't you bring up these figures to him instead of him making goofy Tariq X notions that ADOS is better? Oh, we're better artists, we're better singers, we're better cooks, we're better all. Why didn't you bring up those numbers with him? The premier scholar and the black scholar in America. Huh? Did Darity, the economic genius, how come he didn't talk about these figures with you during the time he was using your movement like a $3 whore to get for a come up? When I was in Atlanta, I wasn't in Atlanta. I was back here. We just spoke over the phone. I got a cousin in Tennessee. He's Jamaican. Don't get out of your, don't lose your shit over it. He just had an opinion. We were talking about reparations because we were talking about, reparations, but also CARICOM as well. Talking about how the British should pay us, pay Jamaicans their due and what have you. But we brought up reparations here. And he was like, listen, reparations should be paid out, by programs here, and you should get a bunch. I'm like, nah. Money is what these guys need. Black people in America need money. And with Yvette talking about catching up with white folks, white people being made whole, why does the term quadrillions not ever come out of her mouth? Why doesn't she have, instead of talking ADOS, why doesn't she have a series, or Tone have a series, quadrillion? Remember the number I just gave you about after the 118 people, the 489 people, other billionaires that will make up the 607, they may be worth $1 billion. They're probably worth several billion. Because as I said in the last video, one of the billionaires off that Forbes 400 list was a guy named Steve Cohen, who's worth $11 billion. He just finished buying the Mets from the Wilpon family, and now they're billionaires. He bought it for close to $3 billion. So now they're billionaires. And my point is, these white billionaires make transactions with other whites all the time, creating new billionaires almost every week, maybe every other day. Meanwhile, with these black billionaires, who do they make transactions with? No doubt with white people. They always have their hands in the wealth. They don't make transactions amongst each other like that. Definitely not on that higher level. So as you say, the data is the data. And I want people in ADOS, just give me answers on why this is never brought up. Because I'm going to tell you something. Trump wasn't going to give you reparations. But y'all were jumping for joy when Biden and $3 Gamala got elected. They're not going to give you reparations either. They told you this out of their own mouths. So tell me why ADOS more and more is looking like a scam. Because Yvette has to know this. She has to know the numbers that are required here, but yet she's saying we got to catch up. Knowing just from these simple numbers you're not going to catch up. Explain how that's going to work. Tell me why ADOS isn't nothing but a hustle, just like that other bullshit group. Because you talk about the numbers of the years of oppression. You talk about the wealth gap numbers. You talk about the prison population numbers. You talk about the number of black folks being worth 11,000 or whatever. The only numbers that are important, as far as I'm concerned, after looking at this, 602 whites to 7 Negroes. I'd be interested to hear your response. Like, share, subscribe. Peace out, and big up on yourself.